Speak quickly, Outlander.
In old Danish folklore, there are dwarfs, but since they're not the kind of dwarfs that I think you're picturing right now, I will instead call them by their other name, the mountain folk. They're more like a kind of fae that you would see in Irish or British folklore, but in traditional Danish fashion, there are many more words written about the mundanity of their lives than there are about the tricks they play on the living. You might hear mountain folk and be like, well, Denmark doesn't have mountains. And while I will die on the flat hill that Denmark does indeed have mountains, the mountain in mountain folk does not refer to the majestic landscape of the Danish countryside itself. Instead, the mountain in mountain folk refers to the globe itself. The world, the planet itself, is a mountain and little people live inside them. And the mountains and the hills of the world are gates into that mountain. The mountain folk live fairly ordinary lives. They grow crops, they tend to livestock, they go to church. But they're also capable of illusionary magic. And the crafts that they create are of finer quality than even the finest craftsmen in the human world can produce. And should a human be able to get hold of one of these crafts or steal one of the mountain folks' caps, which they all wear, they'll be given a part of that power. Although few have ever dared to steal from mountain folk. On the mainland, many of the hills and barrows dotted across the landscape are dedicated to the mountain folk. If a place name has Høj in its name, there's a pretty good chance that it is the source of at least one local legend about little people that live inside the earth. Some popular names include Troll Hill, Man Mountain, Dwarf Hill, Fog Hill, Dancing Hill, Smithing Hill. If it's one of those, there's a really good chance that it's connected to the mountain folk. We do not have any hills here on Læsø, but there are legends of a place that the dwarves called home here on the island. And excitingly, it doesn't appear on any of our modern maps. But I think if we examine the legend and explore the history surrounding the legend, we'll be able to gather enough clues so that we can locate the Dwarf Dune. In the old days, there were an awful lot of dwarfs on the island, and a place of note was the Dwarf Dune, which lies next to Læsø Church. It wasn't all people that could see the dwarfs, and you probably had to be a little bit psychic to sense them. And it was best if you were alone when you were looking, because then they were more likely to come out and play. One day, a young girl was passing nearby where the Dwarf Dune was around midnight, and she saw 4 golden-haired little boys, all wearing white shirts. They danced around in a ring, and then they all of a sudden vanished into thin air. An apple was then thrown from the dune, and it hit her. She picked it up, and she noticed that it was an unusually large and very nice-looking apple. But she dared not eat it until she had carved a cross in it to sanctify it. They were both adult dwarfs and also dwarf children. The latter would be quite pretty, while the former was very hairy, wrinkly, and generally very ugly. Dwarfs would hang out their laundry in bushes around the island, and one of the places where dwarf laundry could be seen more often than not was the shrubbery around the Dwarf Dune and in the bushes around the church nearby. In these bushes, shirts, sweaters, pants and skirts would be hanging, but if someone tried to touch any of these delicate articles, they would vanish in front of their very eyes. There was a woman, however, who one time managed to make off with a piece of clothing. She was passing by a collection of drying dwarf laundry one day, and she just so happened to have a sewing needle on her. She poked a shirt with the needle, and because it was made of iron, it severed the magical connection to its owner and it couldn't vanish, as sorcery must yield to steel. Many have seen this shirt, and apparently it looks just like a doll shirt. A very well-crafted doll shirt, but otherwise unremarkable. In some cases, the dwarfs would lure children into their dune, but they would usually let them go again if the children were baptized. One time they didn't, however. They lured a girl into the dune, and she must not have been properly baptized because they kept her. She was allowed to go and visit her family every once in a while and play with her siblings. But when a finger would appear in front of her and wave, she had to return to the dune at once. One day, she neglected to follow the instructions of the waving disembodied finger and stayed with her siblings for another few hours. And the next day, she would be found crushed to death in a collapsed hole nearby. That was the dwarf's punishment for defying them. So according to the legends, the Dwarf Dune could be out next to Læsø Church, but as you can see here, it's not. The dune could have moved over the centuries, or it could have been plowed over by a farmer like so many other barrows have around the country. Case closed, no dune, no dwarves, thank you for watching, or that is what I would have said if I hadn't read the account about the dwarves in Oxen's Face's travel journey. In one of his other stories, he stays at a farm in Arbitrary, and during the day he walks into town and visits someone and insinuates that it is a very short walk and no big bother. And the reason that he stayed at Arbitrary was because he wanted to sleep and build up his strength before making the long journey to Læsø where he would board his ship. That sounds insignificant until you realize where the person lived that he was visiting and what the distance to Læsø is. Look here at a map of Arbitrary. This is about where Friis stayed, and this is about where he visited someone. And this is Læsø over here. They're the same distance apart, but they are in different parts of the island. And I went over a few instances of this in his writing and the writing of some other people. The island back then was divided into 3 regions for a lack of a better term: Læsø, Byrum and Østerby. And it seems that anything that was inside a region was near, but anything that was outside the region was far. So Friis walking 5 kilometers to visit a judge on a farm in Byrum was just a short stroll, but walking the exact same distance down to Læsø was an arduous journey that would take all day. We can see it again when he leisurely walks from a place on the northern coast about 9 kilometers from Byrum like it's just nothing, but catches a carriage ride to Østerby, which is about the same distance. And we see it in other books like the book Language on Læsø, when the family the story is about walks into town and goes to church, which is about 5 kilometers away, but they pack a lunch and stay the night when making their way out to a fishing hut that is closer to their house than the church is. The only difference being that the hut was part of the Østerby region, and the church was part of the Byrum region, just like the farm they lived on. And I think that's a very human thing to do, to create these arbitrary lines that are tiring to cross. Like, I know it from my own life. Driving to Sweden or driving to Germany is a quest, but driving the exact same distance down to the south of the Fyn island, that is a commute. Because that is within the arbitrary definition of what we define as the country of Denmark, and therefore it is not far away, unlike the other 2 destinations. And if you walk from Læsø Harbor out to the church, you will on the halfway point find a dune. It is not remotely close by our modern understanding of next to, but I think it was to the old islanders, and I think it's the dwarf dune from the local folklore. And if there ever was a dune that could host a healthy dwarf population, I think it would be this one. Put up a chimney and place a couple of windows around, and I think it could be a very nice place for a village of dwarves to live. I hope you've enjoyed this stupid little adventure in my backyard. I have sure as hell enjoyed going on it. And until I see you again, bye bye.